And welcome back to the Behind the Screen podcast. I am joined here once again by my partner, Connor. Whoa. We might get flagged for that sweet music you just sang over there. I'm joined here by my co-host, Connor. How you doing, buddy?
Hi.
We're here to talk about some Pirates news because there's been a couple stories coming out recently about the Pirates
news. Does that come in a glass bottle?
I found it washed up on the shore of Lake Ontario, and I'm here to open the bottle and read to you Margot Robbie's vision for the new Pirates of the Caribbean franchise. In the early 2000s, we saw The Curse of the Black Pearl, and since then, 5 movies in the Pirates of the Caribbean franchise.
Black Pearl, that's what I call my baby toe after getting frostbite.
It's lasted through Verbinski, it's lasted through the 3D craze, and it might be going through a couple of reboots right now.
I hope they re-release all the Pirates movies in 40X.
I hope they re-release all the Pirates movies, but just Jack Sparrow footage. Because when you're watching the Pirates movies, whenever he's not on screen, you're asking yourself, where's Jack Sparrow?
CG Jack Sparrow is all the characters.
That might not be a far-fetched idea. So what's happening right now with the franchise is that Margot Robbie and Birds of Prey writer Christina Hodson are tapped for a new female-fronted Pirates of the Caribbean for Disney.
That's clickbait right there.
Yeah, it seems like every 3 or 4 years we see a franchise do this. And they're saying that it's going to be a wholly original story with new characters, and it's just going to be under the Pirates moniker.
I don't even care if they reboot Charlie and the Chocolate Factory with Margot Robbie as Gene Wilder.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter.
As long as it doesn't have Johnny Depp, it's not going to be any good, honestly.
Yeah.
And the project is going to be separate from another already announced reboot for Pirates of the Caribbean. And the writer, Ted Elliott, and Chernobyl creator, Craig Mazin, are developing the story.
Weird.
So they're going to have a reboot going on that's going to be a side not connected to the Margot Robbie female-fronted Pirates of the Caribbean.
Rogue One.
And then there's also talks that Johnny Depp might be coming back to the franchise in the rebooted, reimagined one because he's been going through a bit of court drama right now. We want to see him in these movies.
And we want more than a post-credit Johnny Depp. Like, don't play us like that.
The boots enter the frame, and then it tracks up the side, and you hear, savvy?
You don't even see his face. He just picks up his hat off the ground.
Yeah, they mocapped him in for that. Oh, God.
This is worst case scenario. Hopefully they'll see that.
No hope.
They will see that Johnny Depp is the franchise.
The flaw of it was that they didn't name the series Jack Sparrow Adventures because it's like making
it sounds like an animated series to me.
A Netflix original for your children to watch.
Yeah.
It's like Indiana Jones without Indiana Jones, where it's like, yeah, Indiana Jones has a bunch of funny side characters, but it's like so obvious that he's the person.
Yeah.
So we're going to talk about why we're so upset that he might not be in these new movies and what that might mean for the franchise. And again, we're already starting to see that there's a bit of fatigue with this. The 5th film that came out made the second least money, just behind The Black Pearl. It only made $795 million.
Pennies. Dust.
Chump change. I spend it on aftershave. And yeah, we're gonna go back to the Verbinski trilogy because the framework for the first 3 films is a bit of an odd one. You had the standalone Curse of the Black Pearl that came out in 2003.
And were they like, oh, we based this movie off a ride?
Have you been to Disneyland World? I've never been to anything like that.
Whatever the one in Florida's called.
Yeah.
I went there when I was 5 years old, and I cried because they tried to force me to go on Haunted Mansion. That's my memory of Disney World Land.
You're just really afraid of Eddie Murphy. That's what it is.
Sure. Again, that was a movie based off the ride. That movie had not been released when I was at Disneyland. They're really grasping at straws there.
Yeah, I kind of just threw that out there, but I didn't even realize that you're right. That is another movie based off a ride.
Epcot the movie.
So, Curse of the Black Pearl, phenomenal standalone film, family film, kind of came out of nowhere and blew everyone by storm. I remember we rented that movie like 10 freaking times on like DVD and on VHS and stuff. It was in 2003. It was still kind of like the format wars.
Oh yeah, when that came out, I was like, this is a movie.
Yeah.
This is a like a once every half decade sort of thing.
It's the Bruckheimer effect, dude. It's like that guy makes stellar movies. He produces stellar movies. And in 2006, we got Dead Man's Chest. In 2007, we got At World's End. But they started shooting in 2005, and they were shot back to back, which it's not often that we get to see this happen because it means that the vision is so grand and uniform that you can shoot back to back and release them a year apart. I think the last Harry Potter movies did that, where they shoot back to back part 1 and part 2.
Yeah, and I'm not a huge fan of this take. There's not enough breathing room between movies.
Here's my thing. I think there's way too much breathing room these days. You're looking at the movies being released by franchises like Marvel right now, and yeah, they shoot them kind of back to back, but these franchises get so big that like the wait between some of these movies is like 4 or 5 years between like another Guardians of the Galaxy movie. There's just so much going on for these people.
I mean, don't make me wait a decade, but also...
When's the next Mad Max movie coming out? Wasn't that supposed to be a trilogy, he said? Remember, he said he had 2 more movies planned.
Oh, no.
So...
Wait, that was the trilogy. Oh, no, there was a third one that I'm not...
The Furiosa trilogy they wanted to make.
Yeah, Thunderdome, I didn't see.
Yeah, no...
Thunderdome.
And then films like Lord of the Rings are really well known for shooting back to back, and that's a franchise that perfectly worked with it. Like, it all felt like one uniform vision versus...
Yeah, I mean, nobody wants to hear my thoughts about Lord of the Rings, so...
I just want to hear your thoughts about the scheduling of Lord of the Rings and how they shot it. But here's the thing, though. Another example of something that wanted to do this but failed at it. The It movie, parts 1 and part 2 came out 2 years apart. It kind of felt like it was almost too far apart.
But it too felt just like a continuation of the first one. It felt like they shot it back to back, which is why like it wasn't interesting.
They had to CGI those kids because they grew up too fast. They hit puberty and they had to de-age like the 14-year-old children in that movie.
Yeah, Finn Wolfhard doesn't stay a fresh-faced little boy forever.
There's a clown out there.
Even watching season 3 of Stranger Things, I'm like, oh man, that's a deep Finn Wolfhard.
Again, when you shoot it back to back, everyone's in the same mindset, all the same actors. Everyone's kind of focused because you're not doing a separate movie in between and completely losing the flow.
Yeah, like what was the spread between like the Harry Potter movies? That was perfect.
Yeah.
At least with the first like ones, because it felt like we were watching them grow up.
And even when they started to get a little bit older, you can tell that, okay, now that he's hit 13, we'll give him kind of like a bit more time off because it's, he's growing in the films as well. We understand that versus they shot those first ones fairly quickly. And it's like, yeah, they were kids for a bunch of the first 2-3 movies.
Imagine being on set. 1 million people are listening and you have a voice crack.
I'm going back to my trailer. It's kind of hard to pinpoint what the Pirates of the Caribbean franchise did so well that they're making like millions and millions of dollars on these movies. Is it the stunts, the comedy, the locations, the cinematography, Jack Sparrow? Is it the fact that they're including really cool mythos that we never get to see in any other movies? So much of the stunts I find in this film remind me of the Fast and Furious franchise, where they're kind of elaborate Rube Goldberg machines where you're really not expecting what's going to happen. We recently rewatched, I think the best of the series, Dead Man's Chest.
Dead Man's Chest.
The whole island sequence is a phenomenal Rube Goldberg escape. I was laughing so hard at every little bit that happens in that movie.
With the water wheel when like they're sword fighting on top and then
and it's rolling and
Johnny
like,
Depp gets hit with the metal right in the forehead and just falls out.
The key, like the fact that like physics play a big part into this, where the key falls on the ground and as the wheel spins, it gets hooked on the thing and goes up above them and he's trying to grab it and stuff.
It's totally ridiculous, but it totally fits into the theme of pirates.
When he's like on the log and they're throwing fruit at him and the fruit's like keeping him balanced, but then he tilts a little bit too far back and it all slides off and he gets tilted off the edge of the freaking cliff. It's like everything is so well thought out and well planned in this movie that like it's unpredictable in like the best way possible.
Yeah, and I mean, Captain Jack is a superhero in himself. Like no one falls hundreds of feet through like rickety little bridges and
when that fruit falls, it's falling from like 4 feet high. It's all like it's like boom, boom, boom. And so like
that's not reached terminal velocity.
But then it's even like every little bit. It's like the pole almost hits him and stuff. Like there's so many little bits in that film where it's so well planned out, and the later films slowly started adding more and more CG, but the Verbinski trilogy was lucky enough that 2006, 2007, we weren't seeing as much CGI use as right now, and whatever CGI they were using back then, it was heavily supplemented with practicals. The third film was the most expensive film ever made when it came out.
Rewatching Dead Man's Chest, especially like Davy Jones effects.
Oh my god, dude.
They're like, I was like, man, this is over 10 years ago, and it looks decent. And I'm like really harsh about special effects.
I think there's a YouTube video out there where they're comparing Thanos to Davy Jones, like side by side, and like you're looking at how shiny Thanos is, and it just doesn't work. But the fact that like the Pirates franchise, so many of those shots were in like broad daylight, and they looked fantastic. And now obviously at night, there's a part part where like he slits open someone's stomach and like fish guts fall.
All the fish come out, yeah.
And it seems seamless to me. Like your brain can't comprehend what's real and what's not, and it just perfectly blends in there. And not only that, but again, if we're talking about just like scheduling and timing, these action scenes aren't just action scenes. There's constant cutaways to other things happening in real time that it feels effortless when you're watching it. One of my favorite scenes, obviously, is when they're all in the cages over the cliff and they start swinging back and forth. But we're constantly cutting away to other Jack Sparrow things that are happening. But
when he bounces the pole he's on out over the fire.
He's just wiggling back and forth and like blowing the fire makes the fire bigger. Like there's nonstop gags in these movies in between all these parts. And again, it's like there's a constant shift in tone in this film where they're swinging back and forth and it plays like the goofiest, funniest, like orchestral music where it's like na 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 na, which you don't get in anywhere else in the whole film. But they realize that one little pit needed something like that. And then it's constantly going back and forth. Like they start climbing up. The other people want to go ahead because they're like, technically the Black Pearl only needs 5-6 of us to do it, you know?
I like when Orlando Bloom gets into the cage too, and they're like, oh, this cage was made of bones. Like, this cage was made after we got here. It's like, I'm like, oh my God. Like, just off-screen crew members drop like flies in these movies.
The diverse cast in these movies, man. It's like, there weren't that many girl pirates, but my God, dude, the amount of characters that you see in this film, like, whoever the casting director is, 100% needs to have awards for this, because these funny people in this movie, man. Like the scene where they're hiring people to be on their ship and the one guy's like, I just want to get out to sea before I get too old, and he's like 97 years old.
Or even like the vignettes where he's like, Orlando Bloom's asking around like, have you seen Jack Sparrow?
Oh, that was my favorite scene.
And it's like the two women and she's like, have you seen Jack? Give him this for me, and slaps Orlando Bloom across the face. Like,
oh dude, and what a cool way to like build up someone's character, because again, we're going back to like, even when Jack Sparrow's not on screen, everyone's saying, where is Jack Sparrow? Yeah. And again, we see that there's so many gags in this movie constantly. There's pirate gags, there's joke gags about like the parrot always saying something and Jack always what do the birds say? You know, like there's no shortage of like little bits like that in these movies that I find that so many of these Marvel movies are kind of lacking, because they're making like jokes that are just there. Like one of the jokes that I just really don't get was in the new Avengers movie. Hulk's trying to like, you know, Bruce Banner's trying to eat tacos or something and they get blown away. Ant-Man's trying to eat tacos and it's like, I'm just like, what? The helicopter lands, the tacos get blown away and he gives him his tacos and I'm just like, who cares about any of this stuff? Like there's no...
I think in Marvel they're like, oh, this is time to make... This is the point we make a joke at.
They're looking at their watch. All right, guys, 90 seconds.
This
we need
is the
quip.
void where the joke should be, because we're not DC. We have to make a joke here.
You know what I call this movie? I call this movie Apocalypto for children. Because this movie is literally Apocalypto
I was
for
kind
children.
of blown away when I rewatched like how hardcore this is. Like at the start of Dead Man's Chest, like a crow fully just picks a dude's eye out when he's like stuck in the cage.
It's pushing the limits in terms of what you can show in a family-friendly movie, because again, we're talking about cannibals, we're talking about bones. The freaking Kraken, the scene where the two guys pick up Johnny Depp's hat and put it on, and they hear the murmur, like, no, you put it on.
Talking about gags, that's the best long gag. When he loses his hat and he's like, no, don't turn back, leave it. And then the Kraken spits it out right before it's about to eat him. That's commitment. He doesn't have a hat the whole movie.
And we were talking about the scene where like there's a great bar fight and he's constantly trying to put on new hats and he's trying to figure out what hat he wants and he doesn't like any of these hats. And again, it's like a little perfect bow at the end where he gets his hat back, much like in Jurassic Park 3. Alan, I saved your hat. Well, that's the important thing. It's all about the hats in these movies.
Always the ringtone from Jurassic Park 3 that will haunt my dreams.
Dude, hats are important in movies, man. Indiana Jones without his hat, Jack Sparrow without his hat.
Indiana Jones would never go a whole movie without his hat, though.
Yeah, that's true. They'd be like, we can't sell action figures if you don't have the hat in them the entire time. I like the Mythos a lot. I grew up a lot playing Age of Mythology and games like that. I've lost kind of like the knowledge over the years because again, when you're into something as a kid, you're very into it. And
Sid Meier's Pirates.
Sid Meier's Pirates, you know,
Sid Meier's Pirates?
Sid Meier's Pirates, the Secret Monkey games. Pirate culture is really cool, and we're lacking so much of it. Stuff like Black Sails is doing really well because people are figuring out that like it's cool to be a pirate. Assassin's Creed 4, when you could sing sea shanties.
I mean, not nowadays. It's not cool.
I don't know, man. I
see some dude with dreads walking around with a rapier. Like,
yeah, you're kind of like, are you Jack Sparrow? If not, you shouldn't be doing that. what's cool about this franchise, I like to think of it as an alternate history franchise because it is so historical. They speak French in the film. They speak different languages. There's gags that are just based off of languages you don't understand. Like
the cultures of the different islands. I mean, I don't know if there's cannibals in the Caribbean, but...
No, but again, this was what, like hundreds of years ago? It kind of feels like...
1700s.
1700s. It's like the King Kong scene, but not as like gruesome. The remake. True. Stuff like that always creeped me out as a kid. And I like that they didn't... Again, they're not making the people on this island to be like bad guys. They're just people that live on the island, and we're interfering with their lives. Like we're the ones coming into their kingdom and ruining it for them. So yeah, they do deserve to eat all of us.
Hey man, I'm just glad they didn't put like any like dinosaurs or, I mean, the Kraken's kind of like
that's the thing though, it's pushing it. Like if there was like a saber-toothed tiger or something, that'd be lame, but like it's all about the water creatures. We finally get to our boy Jack, and we'll just talk about the beginnings of this role, because obviously you always hear about, oh, so-and-so wasn't first up for the film. There was a couple actors before this. And writer and co-creator Stuart Beattie originally wrote the part for Hugh Jackman. And you can actually tell that because that's where the name Jack Sparrow came from, as a nod to him. That would have been
so lame, man.
He would be way too good looking for that role.
And he's just like, he would play it too straight.
Yeah.
Like, he's too, like, regal, kind of. It's...
He'd be better at playing the British people in those movies.
Yeah, he's more of, like, a master and commander type.
Yeah.
I think that would have been a huge misstep.
And Disney didn't think that Jackman was a big enough star. So, they wanted Matthew McConaughey.
What a different world we would live in if Matthew McConaughey was
Why do I drive a Black Pearl? It's the only ship for me, man.
Where's that rum gone?
Why is the weed always gone?
Woody Harrelson is his first mate.
So yeah, and because of how similar Matthew McConaughey looked to Burt Lancaster as well, which is another big inspiration for the actual role of Jack Sparrow.
Okay.
It was offered to Jim Carrey, who had to turn it down because of Bruce Almighty.
Oh, oof.
The Kraken kill someone. Do not go in there.
Bruce Almighty, that really panned out into $1 billion franchise.
They didn't know if they wanted to make it direct-to-video or in theaters, and again, Christopher Walken, Michael Keaton, Carrie Ells, and even Robert De Niro were considered for this role.
Robert De Niro, that would have been weird.
You talking to me? You talking to me, Kraken?
I don't even know what to say to that.
I don't see any other Krakens around here. And yeah, Johnny Depp happened to be visiting the Walt Disney Studios in 2001 and heard they were developing the movie. The rest is history, baby. And again, it's all about Jack. Like, we can pretend that like all this other phenomenal stuff surrounding the film is what makes it so well, but we'll find out that, again, they're going back with the original writer. I don't think that if the film had the settings, the stunts, the ensemble cast, it still wouldn't be anything without Jack Sparrow. It's kind of crazy that how one person can really push a franchise so freaking much.
Jack Sparrow is such a huge cultural phenomenon. I think more so than a lot of superheroes, to be honest. Like, it's so ubiquitous, his image.
Well, you were saying how earlier he's like a superhero in these movies, and I genuinely think that this is the first Marvel superhero that you can think of in a way where it's like they gave him a full franchise. He's the main character in the movie, and he kind of has like these extraordinary abilities to always get away with things. Because again, at the end of the day, in a superhero movie, whether or not they have superpowers, they're obviously going to live at the end of the day. They're the main characters, like they're not going to die. So why not make someone who's a bumbling but genius kind of bumble his way through these things versus the fake, third act, oh, I'm not gonna save you anymore, I'm putting the suit on, I'm actually gonna save you thing,
Yeah, and there's always like at the start of Dead Man's Chest, like the three characters are separated, and there's that narrative promise that they're gonna reconvene at some point, and when they do, it's just like
it's
pure
gonna be
madness.
big. And Jack Sparrow's not only a hero, but an anti-hero at the same time, because he's always cheating and he's lying. And it's kind of the persona of like the Robin Hood, where he's like stealing from the rich, but kind of keeping for himself, Because again, we can't have him be a pure hero, because that's not what pirates are.
Yeah.
And the thing about him stealing from all these people's originated, he was in the slave trade. The later films had like flashback scenes where you see like Johnny Depp as a child, and it really kind of just like takes you out of the whole experience. But again, at the same time, he's like dripping with so much like charisma and personality that it's like tough not to like this guy anywhere.
And I think that's the problem. I don't want to open a whole can of worms here, but I'm going to say it anyway. I think Disney was trying to do with Star Wars what they did with Pirates of the Caribbean, but they didn't have a strong character like Jack Sparrow heading the franchise enough to carry it through 3 movies.
Oh, so you're saying, like, compared to something like Star Wars, that Jack Sparrow was kind of a more harder hitting protagonist than like a Luke Skywalker in a way.
Exactly. Like if there wasn't a strong character in Pirates like Jack Sparrow was, there wouldn't have been demand for a second or third movie.
Well, it's like burned into everyone's minds. What's the first scene with Luke? I think he's like having like dinner with his aunt or something, and like drinking milk and whining about power converters at Tashi Station. What's the first image of Johnny Depp in Pirates of the Caribbean? He's on the mast of his ship, and as it slowly zooms out, the ship is sinking, and he steps onto the dock as the ship just completely submerges into the water. It's one of the greatest opening shots of all time because it literally explains everything you need to know about this character.
Yeah.
He doesn't have the best luck. Things don't go his way, but he still makes it to land somehow. It's such a great introduction to the character. And again, the whole series, like all the world building around Jack, like who is Jack? We get little tastes of he's mistreated some women in the past. He's like a badass rebel to some people. He owes a lot of people money and stuff. It's crazy that this character,
he's this folk hero.
Yeah.
And within the world, he's just this omnipotent force that everybody knows and everybody's talking about, whether he's fixed their wrongs or wronged them.
Not only is the character so memorable, but again, like the catchphrase is Johnny Depp improv the catchphrase savvy. The scene where Jack Sparrow does his great "the day you almost caught Captain Jack Sparrow," and he just like wings his way out of a situation. There's a great copy pasta online where a kid was at a college party and he gets stopped by the college police and he recites the speech from Pirates of the Caribbean and he jumps out the window and broke his leg and they had to, you know. And again, it's like these films live on in infamy where it's like, yeah, he is such a cool character. And again, compare that to the Marvel franchise. Iron Man, he's in a suit the whole time. Spider-Man, he's in a suit the whole time. So what do these movies have to do? They have to come up with a reason why the character's out of the suit for half the movie. Deadpool 2, we just looked at it, where they're in the prison for the whole time. We're paying a lot of money for Ryan Reynolds' face. We need to take off the mask every single time.
Yeah.
But those masks and costumes...
It sucks when you're watching the movie and you realize that.
Yeah, like those masks and costumes are the reason why we're going to these movies. Like, I don't really want to see Tom Holland in high school for that long. Like, the movie should be 90% Spider-Man. Like, I don't care whenever Robert Downey Jr. is out of the Iron Man suit. But what do they do when he gets into the suit? We have to get a camera point of view of his face from inside the suit, so that even when he's inside the suit, we can still see that it's Robert Downey Jr. we're paying millions of dollars for, compared to something like the Pirates of the Caribbean franchise. Could you imagine if like we had to constantly have him take on and off a mask and like...
Maybe that's why the first Iron Man was so good, because they didn't show the need to feel the need to show his face because he wasn't a bankable star at the time.
Dude, they had to hide Robert Downey Jr.'s face more in that movie because it was such a big hit that they were hiring Robert Downey Jr. that they wanted to hide his face as much as possible. Versus now it's like show. Versus again, like these Pirates of the Caribbean movies, he's a superhero in his costume the entire time, and I love that they don't have to have him constantly coming out of the costume.
Also, just like trying to think of another actor like imagine Hugh Jackman with eyeliner on.
Oh my god, dude. I'll try and Photoshop that, but I might just delete Photoshop afterwards. Because yeah, it's such a weird, strange look. And talking about just the iconic look of Jack Sparrow, Johnny Depp drives around with the Jack Sparrow costume in his trunk so that if he stops by a hospital on a shoot or something, he dresses up and he says he does like a 3-hour-long Jack Sparrow improvisation.
I think that's part of the magic of Jack Sparrow, is that people like to think that
he's real.
Johnny Depp like is a version of that.
Yeah, it's like a superset where it's like Johnny Depp is all of his characters, but all of his characters aren't Johnny Depp. It's like Johnny Depp is Fear and Loathing. Johnny Depp is Jack Sparrow.
You read an interview with the guy and it's like, oh man, this guy is
Did you read that GQ interview I sent you?
Like Hunter S. Thompson.
Yeah. He's like drinking wine till 4 a.m. with these writers and stuff. He just loves doing it so much. He says, I'll just sneak in and go surprise a bunch of kiddies through the different wards. It basically turns into a 2-3 hour improvisation and it's really fun. So I travel with Captain Jack. What a chill guy versus Robert. You ever see like Robert Downey Jr. visiting a hospital as Iron Man? He's visiting as Robert Downey Jr., you know? It's like they're visiting as like the actors, but they're like...
What do you expect him to do, Gorian? Put on the CGI suit?
That's all I'm saying, though. I'm saying that like it's kind of harder to meet your heroes more and more these days.
He just has like a Halloween Iron Man plastic mask.
I bet you we're going to see some stills from the new movie being made for Pirates, and there's going to be like tracking dots on the new Jack Sparrow's face, and they're going to like CG in his mustache and his little curls and stuff, because they're like, oh, well, we can't have him. It takes too long to sew them on his face. Mercy. There's never any scenes of Jack Sparrow hanging up his hat in like these series where it's like, I'm done with the trade. You know, it's like, no, he's like genuinely himself the entire time.
Yeah, no, he knows he's going to have to keep pirating till it kills him. And,
exactly. Why not have fun with it?
Yeah.
And again, Hans Zimmer, phenomenal soundtrack.
Big Zim.
Big Zim. I wish I could see this movie in concert. That's like one of those things where I think that just the music brings you so much into that franchise where I can't really hum the Avengers theme. It's kind of just like Avengers.
I couldn't even tell you what the Avengers theme is. Superhero movies,
Yeah.
it's all brass.
It's all brass.
Pirates of the Caribbean, all strings.
Oh, there we go.
Strings based. Brass whack.
Check out my composing YouTube channel later. Compared to things like Die Hard and Terminator, where we're like begging the creators to stop making these movies, we're kind of hopeful that we're going to get a return to a Verbinski Depp Pirates film one day. But if they do choose to go without Johnny Depp and make the fifth film without him, it'll undoubtedly end up amongst the likes of the Die Hards and the Terminators, where no one's going to remember this weird offshoot of Pirates of the Caribbean without Johnny Depp. It's hard to say to all the people that work so hard on these films, but he carries them.
I didn't know they made a fifth movie.
What's your favorite Pirates of the Caribbean gag that you can remember? My favorite is those two bumbling pirates that are always losing their eyes and yelling at each other. The mooring line! Pick up the mooring line!
That's great. And like the other pilot, they come running down the beach and they're like, oh, half our work's done for us. I also love how they're like clearly like the cannibals are like 100 feet from the ship, and then it does like a cut, and then
that
it's like
ship's like
out,
deep in there. Yeah,
and for me, it's like more about the humor. The action sequences are great, but it's like it's just such. It's a movie that can have fun, and I think a lot of movies of this budget level maybe take themselves a bit too seriously nowadays.
Yeah.
So I look forward to another installment of Pirates, whatever that may bring.
Yeah. Why is the rum always gone?
I do love that one. He's like, why is the rum always gone? And he stands up and almost staggers over, and he's like, that's why.
Thank you so much for checking out the podcast. Leave a like and subscribe, and let us know, do you think that the Pirates movies would work without Jack Sparrow?
If they reboot the franchise, give me Robert De Niro in those little platform shoes.